Hi, my name is
Hello.
Lucy. How would you describe the composing process? Do you start with lyrics or melody first? And what would you consider the most challenging aspect of composing music?
Sure, great question. I usually start with words. So I would say 85% of the time I'm starting with the words and I'm exploring what music is already there in the words. So if we were going to, if we had a text and we were going to make a song here today, and let's say, our sentence was, I don't know. What's a good sentence that I don't know. I'm just going to come up with something boring. The dog was chasing the cat. If this is our text, we're going to make a song out of this. There's music present there. So if I say the dog was chasing the cat, ba-da-ba-dee-ba-da-ba, there's a rhythm just to the natural way that I speak it. And then you can make a decision. Do I want to keep that? The dog was chasing the cat. You could, but it's pretty short and it's sort of over with. But maybe there are words that need more drama. Maybe we want to make dog really important or cat really important. And you can do that by making the note higher, holding it out longer. The dog was chasing the cat. There's a million different ways to play around with that. And so that's sort of what I do in the beginning. It's just playing with sound. I'll put my phone on voice memo and walk around sort of singing to myself those opening phrases of the text and see what comes of it. And that way, it still sort of feels flexible. Like I can play with it. Something about when you go to the piano and you start to play, it feels like it sort of has to be that. And so there's something that keeps things fluid when I'm just singing. So I will sing around and then I will eventually go to the piano when I have some ideas that I like, and I'll start to flesh out other harmonies and work from there. Most of the days, my best writing is in the morning. Like that's when I come up with new ideas. So I'll start in the morning, and then by 1 or 2 in the afternoon, it's not going to be good. If I keep writing, I end up scrapping a lot of things I write in the afternoon. And then in the evening, sometimes I can come back. Evening is a good time for editing or for filling out accompaniment, but not so much for new ideas, at least for me. And that's kind of how I work. You asked also, was the most challenging thing about composing. And that's sort of, normally I probably would have said the times when you're stuck, but that's really part of the process, is being stuck. I think you're going to have times like that happens. But I would say right now, the biggest challenge is just sort of being isolated. I usually count on being able to go places a couple times each month and work with singers and interact in that way. And now, because of the pandemic, I've just been home writing music, hanging out with my cat. So I think that's the part that's hard. Good question. Next.
How do you feel about the current popular genres of music?
So I have thoughts. I think there's a lot of value in popular music, and the few times I've done arrangements of popular tunes, like I think about an artist in the UK, Laura Mvula, and I made an arrangement of one of her pieces, and oh my gosh, I worked so hard transcribing those rhythms. Some of the rhythms are so complicated and so syncopated. So there's a lot of value in popular music. For me, I tend to gravitate toward artists that are bringing something fresh to the table that I haven't heard before. And so there's a lot of pop music that feels really similar. And I feel like that always kind of is the case. It doesn't matter what decade you're in, there are always going to be sort of these things that feel kind of the same. So I always like things that feel a bit different. So the people who caught my eye, or at least made me look right now, would be like Billie Eilish or Lizzo, or something that's just a really different thing than what we've seen before. Next question.
Sophia.
Hello.
Excuse our technical difficulties.
It's okay.
Can I ask what is your favorite performance of your favorite piece? And if you wouldn't mind playing it for us, maybe on YouTube. Screen share function.
So I've never been asked that question. Favorite performance of my favorite piece, and I don't think I can answer it. There are several that have been really meaningful to me, but they don't necessarily exist on YouTube to just be pulled up right now. One that you could go and see that does exist on YouTube in your free time if you want is a piece called But a Flint Holds Fire. And I remember the performance of that when I was in Flint, Michigan, being really moving. And it wasn't a technically flawless performance. It was just 250 young people from that community packed into a church, singing their reality that they were really angry about. And that was a very powerful experience to me. And then other experiences that stay with me, I remember hearing 2 psalm settings that I wrote performed in the Czech Republic, and the windows were open in this old Jesuit church, and you could hear, like in the rests, you could hear birds outside, and then at one point it was raining. It was just that one will stay with me for a long time as well. So there are lots of really powerful things like that. But I don't have them on the ready for you. I'm sorry. But thank you. Good question.
Hi, I'm Joseph.
Hi, Joseph.
What do you do when you have writer's block? Do you immediately scrap the piece or take time away?
Yeah, it's a great question. Most of the time if I can afford to take time away, that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to go. There was a book called The Artist's Way by Julia Cameron, where she sort of likened creativity to a pond stocked with fish, and that when you overfish it, you have to restock it by exploring life and going out, seeing new scenery. So that's what I usually try and do, is go for a walk, go to a museum, do something to get outside and see something new. Or right now in this pandemic where there are fewer things to do, I'll go for a walk and just try to go really deep into my neighborhood and like really notice things like which flowers are bloomed out more and what's happening with this neighbor's yard. Or, you just have to pay attention to things when you get stuck. Scrapping things happens for sure. I throw away a lot. But when I get stuck, it has happened before. Occasionally I have gotten stuck. I've got like 2 pages in and thought, this isn't the way to do this. I'm going to go back and try it again. And sometimes even that, just mentally scrapping it, say I'm going to save this, but I'm probably getting rid of it. Sometimes that unlocks an answer. So, yeah, I think I do both of those things, but probably leave it more than scrap it.
Hi, my name is Max.
Hi, Max.
I was wondering what the most meaningful critique you've ever received was.
Oh, that's really good. Critiques are so important, especially if you can approach them openly and not be threatened by them, and they're coming from good sources, because I think that's a whole other conversation. But those of you who are composing and who are thinking about writing, you have to sort of be protective of your art. There are some wonderful people in your life that you will want to share that with, who will give you feedback that's really helpful and that's direct and that's honest, but does so in a way that doesn't crush your dreams. Because I have dear friends I love that I don't share my music with, because the few times they have crushed my dreams, so to speak. And I think you know what I'm talking about. There's that difference between being able to give you honest feedback and support you, or just making you kind of feel horrible about things. So anyway, I think that part is important. But probably the best critique I received, and this was when I think I was maybe in my first or second year of teaching, right after I'd finished undergraduate. And there was a composer that I had the fortune of showing some of my music to and trying to get feedback from, who was much more well known. And he looked at it, and one of the first things he said to me was, you need to think about your piano accompaniments. You need to, if you can't further your piano skills, then you need to really study accompaniments and see what good piano accompaniments look like and how they encourage the music or slow the music, but just that. And that was kind of painful to hear, because I'm not a strong pianist and I knew that, but I thought, wow, there's so much to it. I hadn't thought about really studying the art of a good piano accompaniment. And so that was pretty impactful to me. And I feel like my piano accompaniments are a lot stronger now than they used to be as a result of that.
Hi, I'm Sophia, and I was wondering, what message do you want if it must be to convey, like generally, and also especially concerning what's happening in the world right now?
Yeah. Gosh. I mean, I thought that text was beautiful, and when I wrote the piece initially, and if you heard the story at the end of the presentation last night, or if you didn't, maybe you will, but it was originally written for a dear friend of mine who lost her son, and he was far too young, and it was really tragic. And that was the text that was read at his service, and that I think is really powerful for all of us who've ever lost anyone. I mean, I think about my own parents that they're both gone now, and they both passed within a 6-year span. And so you don't want people to be gone, but when they are, there's that sort of reminder that life is still moving on and there's still beauty in the world, right? And you carry all those memories with you. When I wrote the piece, though, my main goal was just to make sure that Carolyn, that my friend whose son this piece was written for, that she was pleased with it and that she felt it honored the memory of Noah. And so there are 3 places where the lullaby that she would sing to Noah, that's woven into the piano part to sort of honor him. But then I also thought about when I set this, when we decided to do this revoicing, I was thinking about the reality that, we have 1,000 Americans dying a day right now as a result of this pandemic. It's very possible that there might be students in the choirs who participated in this who lost a loved one to COVID. And similarly, this knowing that it's going to be virtual, that's going out to the world, there's this other opportunity that might be something comforting or helpful to someone who is going through loss. So all of those things were kind of in my mind.
Hi, I'm Grace. I've actually been in 2 choirs that have 2 pieces with truth and sing to me. And my question is, many of your pieces talk about peace and beauty. These pieces, the pieces that I've sung, all work with like complex accompaniments. My question is, how do you create this music with everything going on in the world, especially since America has the Black Lives Matter movement, an election, and a global pandemic? How does a composer voice the biggest issues in your music? Like, how do you voice the biggest issues in the world in your music?
Yeah. I have to say, I think I waited far too long in my career to start to try and take on some of these bigger issues. I think the first time that this happened was when I wrote the piece about Flint, Michigan. And that was such a compelling experience to me that I wanted to do more of it. And then from there, I wrote a piece called A Hive of Frightened Bees, which was a poem written by a student in Colorado whose school, they were having issues of threats for gun violence being written on their bathroom stalls. And at the same time that they were having these threats in their school, the Parkland shooting occurred. And this student wrote a poem as a response to that. And the poem is there's nothing really political. It doesn't take a political stance. It just speaks to the actual fears that students have about gun violence. And that was meaningful as well. And then just recently, one of the things that really grabbed me and that became a very different experience is I've been working, it's been about a year counting all the research and the trips on a piece called Suffrage Cantata, which is my first major work. So it's 37 minutes long for treble chorus, string quartet, percussion, narration, piano, and mezzo-soprano solo. And it'll have its first online premiere in a film format, which is kind of crazy, on November 1st. But that process, I was writing that piece. I started that piece in the early spring, like right when the pandemic began, and then wrote it through the summer and finished it in August. But I remember I had written a couple of movements, and then George Floyd was murdered. And when that happened, it really shifted. I mean, I just pushed pause. I had already made plans to make sure that there were diverse women from the suffrage movement represented, because there's incredible work done by Black suffragists that honestly were written out of history by the white suffragists who didn't include them in some of these things. And it's so important. And so I knew that was going to be part of it, but I had to push pause, and I looked at the first movement, and I realized that a lot of the early movement of how I was framing things were very much just from my perspective as a white woman, or from the white suffragist perspective. And I thought, this has to be reshaped. And so at that point, even though I already had one historian helping me, I thought I really need a historian who's Black, but who's also studying these issues. And so I got Dr. Marcia Chatlin, who's at Georgetown, who's a professor of African American studies there, and who focuses in particularly on issues of African American women. And she was fantastic. And we sort of together talked through, and she helped me see some blind spots and reframe some things. But I think that kind of stuff is really important, that we realize that just because we have one perspective and we see the world one way doesn't mean that that's the perspective for everyone. And so, I don't know. I think music allows us to open up and feel and share things in ways that we couldn't. Like if I polled you right now, can I ask you some questions? Is that okay? We'll turn this around. You just raise your hand. Can you all hear me? Yeah? Okay. So how many of you have been listening to music more in this pandemic than before? Okay. How many of you have been listening to music as a way to escape? Okay. How many of you have found yourself listening to music as a way to adjust your mood? And how many of you have been exploring music in maybe new or different ways than you used to since the pandemic started? That's incredible. I mean, and so like we go to this, like when we need to express the deepest feelings, we need to escape, it's there. And so I think it can be that way about the lightest and the most poetic and the most empty things, or it can be also that way and that kind of deep feeling about the things that are most important. So it was a good question. I hope I answered it. I feel like I talked sort of broadly all around it. So if for some reason I didn't get to it exactly the way you wanted, let me know, clarify, and I'll do it.
So we have a question from a remote learner who's not here.
Okay.
And she wanted to ask you, how have you been able to compose music and connect with musicians during a time where you physically cannot be in contact with people to perfect your music?
Yeah, exactly. It's hard because, I mean, it's been this way. I feel like I've had at least one Zoom every day for this month. It feels like, and often more than one, 2 or 3 Zooms a day with different choirs across the US and abroad. And that's really exciting to connect with them in this way. And that keeps me engaged because I know they're doing the piece and we're having conversations. And these are things that probably wouldn't happen without the pandemic. I think the biggest challenge is that when music is set up this way, you can't have the push and pull, and you can't have the real-time adjustments, as a conductor. And so that's been one of the more challenging things, is this large piece that I just finished, Suffrage Cantata. There's, what they did was amazing, but it was completely innovative. You've got this conductor, and they're in a concert hall in LA, socially distanced with the instrumentalists. The union workers are coming in and putting up plexiglass and making sure that things are wiped down in between soloists and all of this. But the conductor, what she had to endure, I mean, she had an earbud with a click track so that she could keep times in a way that was going to line up with what the singers had been pre-recording to. And then she had all this plexiglass with live instrumentalists. So the strings come in, that first sound hits the plexiglass, bounces all over the place. So what she's getting in one ear that's real and one ear that's click is so different. So it's so impressive that they're even able to do that. And then now they're putting it together to be like a documentary, to be like a film. So I think out of this will come some really innovative things that may not go away, that we may keep a lot of this technology. But that's the challenge, is that that piece has to exist only in one way. If she wants to hold a note longer, that's not happening. And so in that way, it really is sort of choreography to a set thing than real music that can move and live and breathe in the moment. And that's, I think, what I miss. That and being with people in a room.
I think we all agree with you there, Andrea. It's just the fact that we're here although it was incredibly scary for us to come back.
I'm sure. Yeah.
It's definitely speaking to us that we just need human contact.
For sure.
Those were all the pre-questions that we had. Is there a question that anyone else would like to ask? We have a couple more minutes left. Sophia, you want to come up? Yeah, right there. Do I see another reluctant hand to go up? Any others? Okay. A repeat offender right here.
That's just fine.
Hi again.
Hello.
So Mr. Sears' favorite thing to do to us is, I think, punishment, is to force us in languages that we don't speak, specifically Hebrew. That's his favorite. Have you found, like, with working with choirs abroad, that there are, like, different issues with singing text in English, or do you translate the text to their native language?
Oh, it's a great question. So, well, one example I can think of is when I went to Thailand, and I was working with a choir. They did sing some Thai music as well, but like when I first got there, the songs that they were all singing were English, and these little elementary children who had been on a bus since 3 a.m., coming through the jungle, and they showed up, and the first thing they sang was this John Rutter, "The Lord bless you and keep you." And it was great. It had their accent was really thick, but it was lovely. And then they also sang a native Thai, which to me was amazing because the Thai language, like the Chinese language, like Mandarin, has these tones. So so it's actually pitched. So sometimes they have to adjust their musical compositions to make sure that the pitch inflection is shown and understood. So composing in the Thai language is something I probably would never attempt because I would be afraid that I would mess up those tones. But yeah, I think it's one of the great things about music is that we learn and get to see our languages and explore that. So I think it's great. I laugh about you thinking of it as punishment because I understand, like, sometimes it is really hard to get a new language in your bones and coming out of your mouth, but it's really great. And then sometimes you get so much of this language that you start to recognize certain words. So singers who stay with this for a really long time, they will know certain words in German and Italian and whatever, just because they've sung them so much in music and have seen those translations come through again and again. So, good thoughts.
Yes, and she was speaking specifically about Bernstein Chichester Psalms. We've
well, yeah, that's great.
A year before that, I think we did the
Adonai.
We did the Fare Requiem. What other? Oh yeah, we just it's the United Nations of choral music, so it should be. That's right. We teach language before tolerance. That's absolutely the purpose. Well, thank you so much, Andrea. This has been incredibly enlightening. I'm going to show the virtual choir video. They haven't seen it yet. Some of them have.
Oh, okay, great. Yeah.
What were your thoughts on it?
I really enjoyed it. I thought it was really well done. Like the production, whoever put the video stuff together, that was impressive.
Yeah, that was one of our guys here that we were.
No kidding. Yeah, it was great. It was really tender. I actually sent it to Carolyn this morning so that she could see it as well. So hopefully it'll be meaningful to her as well. So yeah, thanks so much. This is great. Good to see you.
Thank you, Andrea, again so much. You are just a wonderful.
Thank you. Great. Bye-bye.
Take care.
Okay, there's how I leave. Okay, see ya.
Okay.